HDFC. I remember it when it was in 7A. And then it went to a third-party transfer. And then they told us about all these wonderful, sexy things that we could have when we purchase. And it seemed like it was going well, but there were a lot of deficiencies with our building, a lot of things that we bought that we didn't intend to buy, and we're trying to right that. So I understand why we're in this room tonight, but I also want to say that we have been, and you all included, have been the stakeholders in revitalizing and stabilizing our communities. And now you look around and they say, well, that was great what you did. We want to thank you, but can you move quickly? Because there's a move to take away what we've worked so hard. It's like a dream deferred, an apartment deferred, because it's really not yours if we have anything to do with it. So I'm very serious about how I can help. I will be sworn in tomorrow in Albany, and I will be I was elected, but I'll be that assembly person. But I want you to know that it matters to me in more ways than one, because I need a place that I can afford to live in, because it wasn't sexy back then, as the councilman said. Nobody wanted to be a part of that at all.
I'm Gloria Ann Hussey-Kirstein, and I, like many, am a senior citizen. Proud to have lived in my HDFC for 35 years on West 106th Street. And like Sylvia, we had a very hard time of it 25, 30 years ago when Duke Ellington Boulevard, West 106th Street, where I live, was called Crack Alley by the New York Times. And our building was in such poor condition, we didn't have working mailboxes, so we had to get our mail at the post office. But the local crack dealers wanted to rent out space in our mailboxes to stash their crack. So those are the kinds of circumstances that we were living in many, many years ago. And as Sylvia said, we do not now want to give up our autonomy and financial independence to a mayor who seems to not understand what we've done to save our communities as HDFC shareholders. Tonight I want to thank two major parties before I talk about the foreclosure problem. The first party I want to thank is you. This time, this very month, a year ago, HPD had a plan. They were going to go to our esteemed elected officials and city council with a plan that they had designed in secret. No HDFC shareholders had been involved in the design of this new regulatory agreement, nor had there been any collaboration with elected officials for a regulatory agreement that would take away our autonomy, force us to hire managers. More than half of us are self-managed, as we are in my co-op. They would force us to pay for a monitor, and they would impose all kinds of restrictions on our equity that we've been building up for years and that we planned a future for. So a year ago, that was HPD's plan. Did it happen? No. And why? Because of you, because you picked up the phone, you made calls, you sent emails, you sent letters, you met with your elected officials, and HPD had to stop. Are they going away forever? No. Now that elections are done, they're going to come right back with even more force to try to force this down our throats. So the second party we have to thank are the electeds who came to our side back in the fall. Some, I'll have to say, were not that familiar with HDFC. Certainly Councilmember Perkins knows very well what HDFCs are. But starting with Mark Levine, back in November of 2016, I have here a sheet, I refer to it as my Shakespeare volume. I have here 11 beautiful letters that came from Councilmember Mark Levine back in November of 2016. Within a month of being elected, Bill Perkins, in a special election, he sent a very strong letter to Community Board 10 here, which then helped prompt a beautiful resolution that was signed off by our newly elected state senator, as well as Helen Rosenthal. The Manhattan Council, I Ms. Dickens isn't here tonight, but the Manhattan delegation, City Council signed a beautiful letter. I sometimes sit and read these over my morning cup of tea because it's something that gives me solace to know that HPD didn't reckon with the force that we had as HDFC shareholders fighting for our homes, and didn't reckon that they should have collaborated with the elected officials to get them on their side. They didn't do that. Well, I'm very glad they didn't, because now we have a force here that I think is going to win. So, second part. So thank you. Okay, second part. This is a dread notice here. All right, it's a final foreclosure notice that the city sends out. At this juncture, Mayor de Blasio is set to oversee the largest mass foreclosure of HDFCs in the history of the city. 84 HDFCs are on the chopping block, over 2,000 units of affordable home ownership. Our sisters and brothers are on the chopping block to lose their homes and become renters, lose all their equity. The money that they put in to save these buildings is going to be lost and out the window. Under Bloomberg, he had 81, but then 12 years, not 84 in 1 year. So this is the mayor who's supposed to be for the people, and we find it hard to understand why all of a sudden the rush to do this. We have asked for a halt. The coalition and our electeds have supported us to halt the foreclosure process so each one of these 84 co-ops can be assessed individually along with neighborhood housing services to try to find alternative solutions for these people losing their homes. Thank you for coming, and don't give up.
Thank you, Gloria. How many of you are identified on the 84 buildings that are in foreclosure? Raise your hand. Those in foreclosure. The 84 in foreclosure today. Okay. How many of you have submitted Article 11 applications to HPD? 1? 2? 2 only? Okay. So let me tell you what we have done. I did grow up in an HDFC, so I know what it's like. Just like you, Assemblyman. Just like you, Councilman Perkins. We know what it's like to save your building, to manage your building, and to call a place home. So this is the reason why my company decided to do pro bono work in partnership with the HDFC Coalition. We have submitted so far 10 Article 11 application package to HPD. 2 in Councilmember Richie Torres, 3 in Councilmember Mark Levine, 1 in Councilmember Bill Perkins, 2 in Councilmember Zidanis Rodriguez, and we are working with 2 other buildings, one in Zidanis Rodriguez building and one in Councilmember Perkins as well. The idea is we believe that every HDFC can be saved. There's no reason why. You see, what the city is doing, and I'm just going to digress a little bit for 2 minutes. What the city is doing is not fair. Why the Local Law 37, the third-party transfer program, was developed and created by the City Council to transfer in-rent foreclosure property of private owners, not HDFCs, to a third-party responsible landlord. What they're doing today is that the economy and developers are getting smart and they are paying the taxes and water bills. So there's no more properties. And I am sure that there are many developers out there who needs to be fed. Very simple. Now, the city is saying, you HDFCs out there, you fail. And because you fail, we're going to go after you and you're going to lose your ownership. And we're moving forward with this process of in-rent foreclosure and we're going to take your property away. And as Gloria said, they're going to get it for $1. And then they are going to get a sweet deal. What we're asking for is, why don't you treat the same HDFC the same way you're going to treat it with developers when they get it? Give us a break. Allow us to have a tax forgiveness given to us, or give us a payment agreement so we can pay off the water bills. And also, why don't you lend to us those low interest loan money that HPD manage, which is passed through the federal government, to those HDFC as well, at 0.25%, wow, which they are going to give to developers. They're going to get the property for free, for $1. All the tax, water, and sewer arrears that is owed today will be eliminated. And then they're going to give them a package that's going to look like this. The developers comes in and say, I need to now rehab this building, invest on it. A package of $2 million on a typical 15, 20 unit building. It goes this way. 50% of that package deal could be a federal home loan program at 0%, not payable as long as the developer commits for the next 15 years. The other 30% is going to be financed through a PLP program or an Article AA loan at very low interest rate, which will probably be 0.25%. And then the developers will borrow 20% out there to a private lender at 7% interest. So when you combine the entire package, 50% that is not payable, 30% that is at 0.25%, and the other is at 7%. So who's winning? It's a sweet deal, isn't it? So knowing that, we partnered with the HDFC coalition and said, you know what? I think we can save every building. So HBD developed, when they sent the preliminary in-rent foreclosure letter, says, you know, you also have an opportunity to apply for a tax amnesty program under Article 11. Okay. But then develop a checklist that is so thorough and difficult to comply that makes almost every HDFC impossible to submit it. What's on that checklist? A huge checklist. And some of the items are almost impossible to do unless there are technical people working with you. One of the items they ask for is a financial audit by a CPA for the last 2 years. And almost every, I would say 60% of the buildings of the 10 that we submitted did not have financial statements. So my office had to get out one of our CPA to do it for them. Very simple. The way we tell those buildings is, give me 24 months of bank statements. I don't care what income you have. Give it to us. Let's get our CPA to use that information to create 2 years financial statement. And some buildings did not file 1120s, the tax returns. So I said, we'll file it for you too. And get it done. Because that's part of one of those threshold checklist items that without that, it may not fly your Article 11 application. The second one is a budget projection for the next 5 years. Budget projection for the next 5 years, that must show that you have a budget with positive cash flow. Not deficit, positive cash flow. So in order to create a budget for the next 5 years, we need to ask, okay, so tell us who's paying what in your building. And they just give us a list as to the rent roll of everyone, and we use that to begin the creation of the Article 11 application financial plan for the next 5 years. Yes, in some buildings, we will have to raise maintenance because we have to show that the building will be able to survive for the future. Then there's a price to be paid. The price to be paid is the following. The shareholders and tenants will have to increase because we will not submit an Article 11 application if there is a budget that is on deficit. HPD is going to say, no, you don't qualify because you don't have a viable plan to sustain your property for the next 5 years. So I'm going to pick in one building that is here. Gary Payo is here from one building that we walked into. Things that happens on HDFC, this is, so in the building, they have not raised maintenance for a couple of years. So we came in and looked at the rent roll income. We said, this is not possible. We can't create a financial plan that is a sound financial plan to be able to cover all your obligations moving forward. So we wind up calculating by room counts what it should be, and they have to increase by 120, something like that, right? Yeah. Just about 120 a month additional from what they were paying. So on the basis of that, we created the budget and a 5-year financial plan. The next items that they ask is we need minutes of the last 2 elections that you had. In terms of his building, they only have minutes for 1 year. So we have to have an election, an emergency election. We had it, and we created the minutes. The second one, the other items they asked was, give us a rent roll, current and future rent roll, following the financial plan that shows who's a tenant, who's a shareholders, and who's on arrear. The next item that we helped the HDFC create as part of that is we have to create 2 resolutions. One of them is approving the maintenance increase, and the other one is approving the submission of the Article 11 application. Simple standard documents, but it needs to be in the format that they want. And then we have to create a sales and marketing plans. In some HDFC, they have vacant units that they can sell as part of that financial plan. So sometimes a financial plan will look like, well, we're going to generate this amount of money on sales, and this is what's going to come in on regular maintenance income or rental throughout. And that's how the financial plan will show a balanced budget. And as part of that, we also advise on the budget, the financial plan, that there's an amount of money that goes into a cash reserve account so that the building understands that for the future they need to save money for boiler issues, for roofing issues, for other issues that normally will come up. 2 other items that are simple: multiple dwelling registration, certificate of property liability. But the reality is, what we have done is we have created what could be a complicated process to a simple one. My team can get an Article 11 application filed if we get 3 items from you: your current rent roll, your liability insurance policy, and your MDR, your multiple dwelling registration. With those 3 items, we'll go back, we'll do all the financial modeling for you, we'll create all the supporting documents that needs to be created, and we'll come back to you with the plan. We can create an Article 11 application to be filed to HPD within 5 days. And we are committed to get as many Article 11 applications into HPD as possible, because we believe that every building can be saved. That's the commitment that the HDFC Coalition has. It's a commitment that we all share, because we want to make sure that we preserve ownership in our community. Thank you.
Victor, on behalf of the coalition, is providing pro bono services. Sounds like legal, accounting, consulting to HDFCs in our neighborhood. This is someone who, unless I'm misinterpreting what you're doing, is taking the skills he learned and is applying it to help the community. And so I want to thank you again for that. I don't think it's lost on us. We need more business people to behave the way Victor is behaving. Okay. First, can you talk about how you deal with quote-unquote corrupt boards? Do you have any advice for how people deal with corrupt boards?
Open election.
No,
It's
it's
not that easy. It's not that easy.
Okay. Gloria and I and Sylvia had an opportunity to walk into an HDFC that in foreclosure. We were invited by some shareholders to come in. So when we came in, we realized that they did not have elections for the last 2 years. At the same meeting, after explaining the process of what we needed to do to submit a successful Article 11 application, we decided that there needed to be an election held at that meeting. It was a very simple process. We went through the requirements of the Article 11 application. We went through the requirement of a normal bylaws of an HDFC and what needs to happen in a regulatory agreement requirement. And we said, in order for us to have a reset and move forward with this successful Article 11 application, we will need to have an election tonight. Fortunately, we had quorum. The majority of the shareholders were sitting there. We opened a nomination process, a very open process. People were nominated to be on the new board. They voted on, we created ballots, and they voted on. We recorded what took place, just to make sure, and there was an election held. The new board immediately took over and began the process of gathering the rest of the documents that were necessary to submit the Article 11 application. And this is a very active board, the new one. In a week, we were able to submit the Article 11 application into HPD. So it could be done.
So basically, you performed a coup on the present board. Is that what happened? I just want to put this in English for me.
But technically, we did not want to get to the blame game because that's not the purpose of it.
I got it.
When we get into an HDFC and we find the circumstances that are being faced, we pretty much said, the past, stay in the past. Let's do a reset and move forward. If you want this Article 11 application to be submitted and to be submitted successfully, we need to be committed to forget about the past and let's move forward. So that's the spirit from where we start. So, and that's how we got it done. And this is a building that I think will be successful. If they get approved for the Article 11, this building will be a very successful HDFC moving forward because now there are people committed there, they understand the roles and responsibility, and we continue to provide them guidance and support as part of the coalition to them. So it could be done. I believe that every HDFC, regardless of the circumstances of the past, can be saved with these looming issues of in-rent foreclosure.
Got it.
There's a building in the Bronx. I get called in, by a person that is concerned, and she said, we haven't gotten a financial plan given to us for the last 5 years. We haven't had elections for the last 5 years. What can we do? And I said, okay, can you talk to the rest of the shareholders and see if you can get a majority so we can have a meeting? So what I do is, or what we normally do at the coalition as well, is that we go and research everything about that HDFC. We go to ACRES, we go to HPD, we go to the Department of Finance, we go to DOB, we look everything that is there in terms of issues, violations, real estate taxes, are they behind on water and all that. We look at that and we use that information as well to arm the new group or the people that are concerned. And we ask for a copy of the bylaws because the bylaws will say when and how an election is to be held. So looking at the bylaws specifically, and if we know that there's a quorum for the group that are concerned, we call and create a flyer for them, and they call for a meeting of the shareholders with the specific items to be on the agenda, which is for the purpose of having a financial report and holding an election. So it gets posted within the required time frame that the bylaws require. It's given to everybody in the building, and people show up. And in this particular building, this was last week, actually there was 65% of the shareholders were there. So we went on and held the elections. The old board did not attend. None of them showed up. We recorded the election, tape recorded it. It was a very open process, open nomination. On that day, anybody that was interested in standing was able to run, and people got elected. The old board decided not to show up. Then, immediately the day after, this new board says, in this meeting, we all get elected, and notify the rest of the shareholders what has happened. At this point, we are to see what will take place moving forward. Then we assisted the new group with a form letter that we have created, requesting a series of documents that they needed to give back to the new board. And that they had 30 days to submit those documents to the new board. We're waiting for the 30 days to end. And I hope that the process will conclude there, that they will provide the required documents to move forward.
And if they don't?
Then if they don't, the new board then can petition to HBD to intervene as a supervisory agency. If HBD said no, then they could go to court and try to get the required documents that they need from the old board. That's what we did in a particular building last week in the Bronx.
And that building was not under foreclosure?
The building is not under foreclosure, but it's behind 3/4 on real estate taxes.
Right, I got it.
So, and he had 72 violations. So there are issues there that the new group is concerned that wants to sort of deal with. I just want to say that from my part, in relations to the coalition, the items that I'm working on right now, because it's time sensitive, is Article 11.
Right.
Any other issues, you could discuss it with Glory and the team of the coalition. My job within this scope of work is to get as many Article 11 application filed to HPD. So if there are any buildings that need assistance with the Article 11 process, because we have literally less than 90 days. It's 87 days that are left for this process for the in-rem foreclosure to conclude. So we want to get as many applications as possible. So I am going to be just be dealing with that issue.